Yeah, absolutely. Welcome in. We have a lot to get to here as we dive into the divisional round jock market style here. We'll look at Saturday across the board, also with our projections up on Awesemo, and we'll touch a little bit before we get out of here on Sunday's slate as well. It's all about making money as jock market has turned the DFS world into the stock market, when to buy low, when to sell high, when to get in on an IPO. Well, that's why we have Eric Lindquist here. The man, the myth. I don't know if you're a legend yet. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I hope 34 years old. I think I got some years ahead of me if we're going to get to that status, but I'll take whatever I can get. So appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Well, you are a man.
I am a man. Hey, you got one of those boxes checked. I'm good with that. I'll take it. I'll take it.
How are your futures looking so far in the Amex? That's what everybody wants to know.
Well, I mean, I faded Cantley and he's 600 through 6, so I might just be closing the laptop a little bit early here this week. He loves it out there. He's really good at golf. Oh, and Matt Wolf's 4 over after 6. So nice. Pretty sure that things are not going the way they need to in the golf streets. Might be the quickest week I've ever had in the history of PGA DFS golf. And there's still 2 more rounds that I have to watch these idiots go nuts. So it's like, whatever.
I know. It's not over yet for you by any means. Yeah. The misery is going to be there. Yeah. So we have a nice distraction.
Under. Yeah, nice
15 under?
Ooh. Well, no, I'm saying that if he couldn't go 15 under his next, 2.5 rounds make the cut, because it's 3 rounds until the cut on Saturday. So.
Sure. Crazier things have happened, I'm sure, right?
Yep. I might have to be getting into jock market to try to reclaim some losses or further take myself into a hole. Either's fine.
No, it's all about reclaiming losses here. You're the expert. You can't lead into a show saying that you're going to further bury yourself. Come on.
I'm just upset. It's really all it comes down to. Cantley, he would do this to me.
Let's get you in a good mood. Okay. Let's look at jock market.
Yes,
absolutely. Now, we have always a different approach to everything. If it's the NBA, NFL, whatever it is on jock market, it's just going to be a different approach than your typical DFS sites, than your typical even betting areas that you may attack. So looking at Saturday, we have the 2 games. I think a lot of people are just kind of up in the air what to expect from Derrick Henry. And then the later game feels like there's a heavy emphasis on a team that I know you love to hate in the Green Bay Packers. So how are you approaching from a jock market standpoint? Let's just look at Saturday as far as anything that jumps out at you, even if it's a game flow or game script that you think we can take advantage of.
Yeah, so jock market split their slates, first of all, for everybody keeping track at home. There's Saturday, there's Sunday. So we're playing 2 games on Saturday. We're playing 2 games on Sunday. And for me, I think I said this on yesterday's show. I guess it would have been with Lofty when we were kind of going over ownership for DFS purposes. I like every dog this week. I think all of these games are going to be very competitive. And obviously the Green Bay San Francisco game, 6-point dogs. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, Jair Alexander's questionable. There's going to be no MVS out there. So those are 2 pieces from the Green Bay side that are kind of pieces you need to be paying attention to. But for me, the main thing is I think they should have some success running the football. I mean, this whole Deebo Samuel setting up starting at running back. I mean, this is starting to get ridiculous, but we're talking about 2 teams that are elite. We're looking at San Francisco. They're 6th in power rank in defense and PFF, 6th in power rank offense. Green Bay 4th in defense, 1st in offense. That's why you really need to pay attention to Jair Alexander, one of the best cornerbacks that exists, period. And of course, Bosa, he's questionable coming in for San Francisco. So not sure how those injuries are going to kind of be matching up. Of course, Aaron Rodgers has a leg up in the quarterback department. Who on planet Earth would possibly argue that? But in terms of jock market, I'm looking at some of these San Francisco pieces as pieces I want to get to. And then in the Cincinnati-Tennessee game, I don't know what to expect out of Derrick Henry here yet. I'm still not 100% sure. Everybody's just so sold that he's going to be 100% going out there playing every snap. First of all, we got to see that he's even playing. Second of all, I'm not sold on that kind of analysis. So for me, both 1 seeds going here. I think both are definitely at risk of getting beaten straight up, which makes me really like some of these under-owned pieces on the other side.
Wow. All right. So let's start with, actually, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you have the Packers losing straight up. That's probably the better place to start. Now things will blend together with these 2 games only here, but
I think that might be the only game. I think that's the only game I'm going to take the points. I'm going to run money line on the other 3. I feel pretty confident about that. I think I'll take the 6. and take my shots here with San Francisco. Again, Green Bay has looked really, really good. They get to play through Lambeau here. I mean, this is kind of every year where they look elite. Who's going to beat them? And then Tampa Bay just goes and rolls them in Green Bay. Give a different situation, 15,000 fans they could allow in last year. It's going to be a full rockin' Lambeau Field this time around, but still, San Francisco is really showing me an ability to win in a number of different types of game scripts. They can come from behind with, some elite. They didn't even have to utilize George Kittle. They were just kind of playing to not lose towards the end of that game. That is just an untapped weapon. I think people are really sleeping on how potent San Francisco can be. Now, I want to see their pass rush completely together there. Getting Nick Bosa is about as important as it gets. 89.5 grade on PFF for an edge rusher. I mean, we're talking elite of elite. That would be a piece that if he's missing, I would have a lot more qualms about it.
Man, somebody who's holding way back in June a plus 2,000 ticket for the Green Bay Packers. I just hope you are wrong, like wrong. But you've been right more often than me on this show.
Hey,
so what do I
will
know?
say, I cashed my divisional ticket. I'm not such a homer here on the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, they were plus Green Bay was plus 220, I think, when talk was Aaron Rodgers going to Denver and that he's going to hold out and everything else. And I was like, he's playing slam that number.
And you did. And
I did.
You paid off. Exactly. That's what I'm hoping for as well. We have on site for our projections that you can just marry along here with as far as a companion on everything that we talk about, especially when you're playing on Jock Market. The highest projected guy. Now, he's not the most expensive. Actually, let me double check that. I think he might be. Yeah, he is. So the highest guy across the board here is Davante Adams. Now, this can work in your narrative as you built up here, where if you like the Niners up and if you like San Fran winning this game outright, I know you're taking the points here, but like the possibility of that, hey, chances are that the Green Bay playing down, be throwing. You want to get the ball to Adams. It's not just send him down the field 40 yards on a fly route. It's put the ball in his hands as much as possible. So from a volume standpoint, it makes sense, but wow. I don't know how much that factors into just you having Green Bay down or possibly just being out in this game. But Adams, like the public is all over him. So I don't know how much of a deterrent that is as well on Jock Market.
Davante Adams is the most immune to game script that there is, period, in this entire slate. I don't think anybody would probably argue with that. They played Green Bay in week 3 and come from behind mode. They were in San Francisco, 18 targets, 12 catches, 132 and a touchdown. 34.2. That seems pretty good on Jock Market. I would be looking at, that was a complete negative game script. Of course, they won by 2, but if anybody remembers that game, they were down and trailing the entire time, won it on a last second field goal. So I'm looking at a guy like Davante Adams. If you want the security, if you have the bankroll over at Jock Market, which, if you want to, if this is your first market to jump into, you get up to $100 first match deposit. You get the $50 match deposit, but then you get up to $100 refunded back into your account on your losses. I would be just fine if you wanted to just make your investment. Davante Adams is going to be the highest score on the slate. This is PPR over there, 21.8 projection. For me, I'm going to be looking, obviously, at finding some value here with the lowly outlook of a guy like George Kittle or Eli Mitchell in this game on the other side. But you could probably do worse than the security of Davante Adams. If you had to pick one guy to finish with the $25 per share, he has to be in on this slate.
Yeah, you mentioned Kittle. I feel like Kittle is probably going to be best served getting to him ahead of time because, and we're shout out to Rasa because he was the one who gave this out on the Odd Shopper betting show earlier in the day, but it correlates to what you're saying about them not using Kittle on purpose and him being such a dangerous weapon. He's got great odds for a first touchdown. Like, I don't think they're going to just strategize against the Packers with a rope-a-dope scenario where Kittle is just not used for a first half and then all of a sudden he explodes. Chances are that they're going to come out swinging, and if they're going to use Kittle like we all believe they will, it's going to be right away. So my point being, Eric, is that I imagine if you're high on Kittle like you are, you want to get to him ahead of time as opposed to taking any type of in-game risk.
Yes, I do. And the other part of this that I think is probably being slept on a little bit is if I purchase any shares of players for Green Bay, San Francisco, I get the access to watch the Cincinnati, Tennessee game to figure out how they're going to mix and match with me. And if I need to unload for a loss, even before the game or something, like let's say that we have 4 players. Let's say this Cincinnati, Tennessee game just absolutely shoots out. find a way to get rid of some shares of George Kittle ahead of time, just because it might be very, very difficult. You could end up buried. I mean, if you just look at his box score, there's certainly not a whole lot of hope from the last 4 weeks. But for me, there are these massive spike upside games. And I don't think Cincinnati, Tennessee goes completely berserk. I think both teams are going to try to establish Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, if he does go, or Deonta Foreman in that kind of a regard. I like the under of both these football games. I don't see them either one really being complete shootouts. But if you have any purchase shares of San Francisco Green Bay, it's all relative to every player going on the day. So I'm going to be able to watch the Cincinnati, Tennessee game. And if it's like the high point of any kind of skill position players, 15 or 16, like obviously the quarterbacks matter on Jock Market too, just straight up. But like, if no skill position player really goes off, you have to be feeling ecstatic about your prospects for guys like George Kittle, Allen Lazard with no MVS now with him doubtful for this game. So many different players that you can get for a value in the IPO phase. Like for me, that's going to be a strategy I really take is targeting that San Francisco Green Bay game and having a wait and see approach.
Is there anybody below Lazard that you can look at without MVS and possibly taking advantage on that, right? I mean, Cobb's expected to play. We know that Rodgers went. I mean, is this a Gronk Brady scenario here where Rodgers is going to do everything he possibly can to get Cobb an extra reception for that $500 bonus he has just to show up in the playoffs?
It has a $500 bonus.
No, it's just using that.
That's hilarious.
I was going to say an example of how low Cobb is on the depth chart.
I mean, Cobb, I'm expecting him to kind of shoot up the board a little bit. I bet he gains a little bit of traction. They're going to play a lot of wide receiver 3 steps. DeGuara is not really that involved as a pass catcher, certainly not in a Robert Tonyan type role that we might have been expecting for him earlier. But with Marquez Valdes-Scantling now doubtful, I mean, that is a deep threat that's kind of missed off the board. Randall Cobb and Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he basically said, bring Randall Cobb to me. Like that was basically them making him happy because it's a player that he trusts. Obviously, he was very upset about losing Lindsley to the Chargers at center. And there were a number of players he wanted to have some say in keeping. But Randall Cobb is there for a purpose, and that is to be a go-to guy in clutch situations. So I think that might be a guy that is better served as somebody to get in the IPO phase. I talk a lot about guys that you might want to get in game. I think it'll be kind of death by a million cuts. Like Randall Cobb, maybe like 6-7 targets, 5 catches, but one of those gets in the end zone and you're looking at a guy who could really vault off the board, especially, I mean, they're not going to be able to stop Davante Adams. He's part of, I would call their running game. They throw a lot of those sideline, quick outs and just, hey, make some moves on the sideline. But Davante Adams, if he doesn't go for an absolute ceiling performance, one of these other pass catchers, there's no doubt about it, Aaron Rodgers is too good not to get somebody else involved.
All right. So talked a lot about the benefit of having that first game go and then attacking this second game. What about attacking that first game? I'll tell you here, I'm not high at all. I love the under in this game. I love the Titans in this game. I think Joe Burrow's been on way too comfortable on this nice home stretch that he's had. He hasn't thrown any interceptions. It's just all of this building up to a great regular season offense with a bunch of young players on there coming down to kind of like a harsh reality in the playoffs. So I want to stay away from many Bengals unless I can look at the game flip there and see them being down and take advantage of it ahead of time. I don't know how you see this game. So if you see it the opposite, maybe you're attacking Burrow, Higgins, Chase ahead of time, or you're just looking at possibly the return of Derrick Henry as an opportunity to attack.
Yeah, so I like the under here, but I'm not going to bet it. I think it's pretty darn close. I see some different game scripts and paths. The San Francisco Green Bay game, I do like the under, but it's ironic because, if I like the under of both of them a little bit, there has to be this wait and see approach. The other thing for me is Cincinnati has a number of pass catchers where it can be really spread around. And we saw T. Higgins have no involvement whatsoever last week because Jamar Chase was wide open on every freaking play. Like Vegas had no answer for him. So they kept peppering him with 12 targets and such. I think T. Higgins will regress back towards the mean of what we've seen. I mean, we've seen even 13, 14 targets in 2 of his past 6 games. Like those are massive allotments of targets. Cincinnati's very inclined to just target the matchups that they like there. Tyler Boyd, somebody that's going to get involved in some kind of capacity as well. They just have such a strong wide receiver core. And then Joe Mixon on the other side. There's a number of ways, though, that ball gets spread around. So, yeah, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins stand out as a guy who can put up ceiling performances, but you run this game 100 times and both defenses, are not that good. I think that you could end up in a scenario where the game just slows down with the running games. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. Derrick Henry, people, he finished top 10 in rushing this season, playing less than half of his team's games.
It's amazing.
Can you
10
believe
touchdowns
something
too,
like
right?
that?
Or at least.
It's absurd. But on a per carry basis, it's almost been identical for Derrick Henry compared to what you have with Hilliard and obviously Deonta Foreman too, just on a per yardage basis, yards per carry. I mean, it hasn't been like elite by any regards there for Derrick Henry. So regardless of Henry being there or not, you can talk about him being a big bruising back or being this guy who, is capable of doing a lot to really open it up for his team. But looking at the numbers for it, I mean, I think they're going to be able to run the ball decently well, but still only 102.5 yards per game here for the Cincinnati defense. They're definitely more susceptible in the passing game. I think I would be looking at, even in a game that I don't think shoots out like crazy, AJ Brown. And I've been saying him constantly. The first game he returned, we did this show, AJ Brown. I said that was your Thursday night pickup. Go get him. And boy, did he come to fruition. 11 catches, 145 and a touchdown against San Francisco in that spot for 34.5 fantasy points on Jock Market. Finished number 1. Thank you very much. That was enjoyable. But AJ Brown again in this spot against Houston, they didn't really need to push him. They kind of wanted to keep Eddie healthy. Came down to the wire more than it should have. But AJ Brown is the number 1 there. Julio Jones, I just simply do not trust to be a major culprit there. And I think Cincinnati gets up a little bit early. And as I said, I just like the dogs to be a little bit more competitive than what the field does. So I'm going to probably go towards the passing game there and then Joe Mixon on the Cincinnati side.
Yeah, I mean, thinking of it here, if that's the case, right, and the Bengals are up, the line of thought and thinking, part of me, is that Mixon's going to take over. They're going to try to run this game out, especially on the road. You want to keep the lead and keep guys like Brown off the field. I get that. But there's also how they get up, right? It's also the means and method in which they get up. And clearly, Ja'Marr Chase, what I'm surprised about here, though, is that there's not much of a break with T. Higgins. So I wonder if it's just worth it eating a slightly more amount of chalk to get to Chase, as opposed to maybe trying to outthink the field and dip a little bit to Higgins. Look, Boyd's a different story, right? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. It will not be this difference, though. That's the thing, is that we're looking at what their fair values are. That should tell you right away that you should go get T. Higgins, because he's not going to go for $11.95 a share. And Ja'Marr Chase is not going to go for $13.13. You're going to see Ja'Marr Chase go for about $15, $16. You're going to see T. Higgins go for about $9.10, like somewhere in that range in the pregame IPO phase. That's the major difference, is that, these are what we're evaluating as their fair values. But Ja'Marr Chase is definitely going to get steamed up. I mean, the public perception coming off of the massive game, he's just good. Like Ja'Marr Chase, there's an obvious rapport. He played college football with Ja'Marr Chase, or with Joe Burrow. There's an obvious rapport there. That's why they went up to go get him. Everybody talked about, you need to revamp the offensive line. Well, it helps if you have some maniac out there running routes and is always open. So like Ja'Marr Chase is very good, but T. Higgins also confirmed very good at football. So as you said, I think I'm more inclined to get T. Higgins, because I don't expect him to go for nearly as much as Ja'Marr Chase. So fair value wise, that's what that is telling me.
So do you want to look a couple of more minutes here, 5 more minutes or so before we get out? Do you want to look? All our projections right now are up for Saturday. We've hit you with a bunch of guys. I mean, there are a couple of other ones, right, that we could spend a little more time on. You mentioned AJ Dillon, right? We could talk about Dillon. We could talk about Brandon Ayuk. There's some guys there on the secondary, maybe deeper element there. But I am curious, too, how you're approaching Sunday, because we have 2 games. They're pretty much flat there. You mentioned that you're dog heavy across the board. You're not getting a ton of return there with the Bills, but did I get that right? Do you like the Bills to walk into KC and win that game outright?
Yeah, I do. I like the Bills to win.
I think
the Bills put a shellacking on KC, actually, is probably the right thing. You're not going to hear that anywhere else. I like the alternate spread 10.5. I'm flipping 2 touchdowns at plus 800. I mean, yes, it's happening. Look at that. Look at Mike Awesemo there rubbing the Bills hat. I'm a sicko. And again, this is coming from a guy who, back when Patrick Mahomes was in college, I said he'd retire the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. Here's the problem. Flat out, Josh Allen is a freak too. Like, they're both freaks.
Correct.
And I feel like defensively, Buffalo has a lot. Like Tre'Davious White, there's no doubt that is a massive, massive hole in this defense. But we've really seen Buffalo in a lot of football games. And I'm not just talking about that ridiculous football game that they played against New England at home, where, they got the ball ran all over them. But that is basically how you attack this Bills defense. Their secondary, I'm not saying that they're going to shut down KC by any means, but I think there's more paths with Devin Singletary. They've been able to establish some sense of a run game here. And if you can do that against KC, it opens up a lot of the field. Gabriel Davis has been playing at a ridiculous level. I don't know. There's just some apprehension I have with some of the Chiefs, and it's just more of the public perception. It's just that KC is going to roll, the Green Bay is going to roll, and all of these things. And there's a reason that spreads moved from 6.5 down to 5.5 in the Green Bay game. We've seen KC bet down from 3.5 to 2. So I think everybody's seen kind of what I saw earlier in the week. That's why I went out and bet all the dogs as soon as I possibly could. I mean, you can kind of try to middle it. I'm not going to try to middle 1.5 or anything ridiculous like that, but we are seeing that trend be towards some of these dogs. The Buffaloes, Devin Singletary, just being able to get any sort of established run there opens up so much for Josh Allen. I think in a must-win game, I think he's going to go out and be capable of putting some yardage up on the ground, whether by design. I mean, he is just playing at such a high level. And what we saw him do against New England, that is a better defense than what they're going to be facing here in KC, given it's on the road. But I just think that with everybody else all over Kansas City, and I get it, Patrick Mahomes is special. I think Josh Allen is equally as special right now.
So let's look at this on our way out, right? You've got two guys in Diggs and Hill, which are going to be chalk heavy, and a lot of people are going to get to them. I will say this, as much as I'd like Kansas City in this game, I think both teams stand great opportunity to pepper their top receiving threats, especially if one team finds themselves being down 7 to 10 points throughout that game. So I'm with you there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an opportunity clearly to attack Hill and attack Diggs. But you also mentioned Davis. You mentioned some other guys on Buffalo. What about, are you just going to approach it from this is going to be a Mahomes to Hill night? I know Kelsey is also going to be the obvious one, but you do have a couple of guys in Pringle and Hardman, which have some appeal. And then regardless of what happens with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, moving forward, right, clearly Andy Reid and the Chiefs have found a guy, at least on the goal line, that they like to give the ball to in Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, I'm really worried about that running game. I don't know. The last 2 days, Darrell Williams, God, I do that every time. Darrell Williams and CEH have practiced in full. I think you're looking at a true 3-man situation here. It is so problematic to try to figure out exactly who it's going to be. I will also say that, they were able to run the football last week in kind of a surprising way there a little bit. Jerick McKinnon only 12 touches in general. Jerick McKinnon, much more known back to his Minnesota days, San Francisco days before he just got bit by the injury bug constantly. Known as a pass catching back, known as kind of your little sprinter coming out of the backfield, just an absolute athletic freak, no doubt about it, but not exactly a guy you're going to give the ball to in a lot of goal line situations unless it's in some kind of a formation for the running game for him to come out of the backfield. But I think the running game is kind of a stay away, aside from if you get an activated CEH and he's coming in undervalued over on Jock Market, that would be fascinating. For me, the guy that I like the most is Byron Pringle. He's really kind of ascended into wide receiver 2 territory here for KC. And, once again, this is the late night hammer. Rams, Tampa Bay. We didn't even talk about the Rams. I like the Rams straight up in this one as well. I just take the points if you want to, but I think the Rams are just going to flat out win that football game against Tom Brady. And I've bet against Tom Brady before unsuccessfully, but I'm going to continue to do it. Byron Pringle, though, for this KC late night hammer, we're seeing 7-8 targets pretty routinely for him. He's got Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. He's been getting a lot of double touchdown games here to really inflate some of those stat lines, but still, that's a pretty large allotment of target volume here for any KC receiver, even in come from behind mode. Pretty game script, both of these teams. I would say KC and Buffalo. That's why you see the total around 54, 55. That's why it's the highest on the weekend, the one everybody wants to target for DFS purposes. But for Jock Market, legitimately, you're getting a lot of value by taking some of those ancillary wide receiver options and specifically Byron Pringle over DeMarcus Robinson, over any of those other pieces that you might be trying to make a thing.
Awesome, brother. Just following along as you lay everything out. Again, a reminder out there, take advantage of our promo code Awesemo on Jock Market. You're fully prepared now to attack the divisional rounds, all 4 games, both slates on Saturday and Sunday. Make sure you use that promo code Awesemo. We'll match your first deposit up to $50. A lot right now that we just covered, my friend. So We all appreciate you going deep dive into this week here with Jock Market.
Yeah, anytime, my friend. Sign up at Jock Market. It's a lot of fun. NBA markets are great. PGA markets hopefully are great because my lineups sure are not.
For Mike Awesemo producing, that's Eric Lindquist. I'm Eytan. Thanks for hanging. We'll see you soon. Have a great weekend.